All right, welcome everyone tonight. Thanks for coming. Thanks, Alex, for pizza.
Oh, yeah.
Tech Systems. So stand up and just introduce yourself and what you do.
Sure. Well, I'm Alex. I'm a recruiter, but not the kind that bites, so that's good. I left my business card up there if you guys want to grab it. Obviously, I do placing if there's open opportunities, but I also get to come to events like this and talk with a lot of companies about what they're looking to do in the next little bit, what technologies they're using, kind of what their overall plan is. So just in terms of networking, always good to have a recruiter in your back pocket. And you can ask Matt. I don't bug you. I'll call you maybe every 2.5 months, give you an update, see what you're up to,
and free food.
And free food. I'll take you to lunch all the time and pizza and whatever you want. So I just like to get to know all of you and kind of understand what you're looking for in the industry and how I can kind of help out. So if you're ever interested in something like that, I'd love to chat. And like Matt said, I'm always good for a free lunch. So let me know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for the pizza. And Mac, thanks for the venue for hosting. At the end, I did bring my extra swag from Tech. So we have some extra shirts and socks and some of the chimp hat. And we have the usual JetBrains license as well raffled off, so more than normal, so that's good. We have the double header tonight. Each of them will be about 30 minutes, a little 5-minute break between, just to switch around. Go ahead and do introductions. Just go around the room, say your name, where you're working, what you do for work, and what's a good topic? I didn't think about that ahead of time. Any ideas for the topic? We got some sports seasons coming up. Maybe which school you're rooting for, local schools. See how divided the room is.
Oh, no.
Is that safe to do? Is that a little dangerous? Yeah? All right. So maybe which school you're excited for and which sport maybe, if you specific sport.
Sweet.
Start. Alex?
Yeah, well, I already introduced myself, but I'm a Utes fan, so go Utes. And I like football. I grew up with football and volleyball, so yeah.
So we said name, where you work, and favorite local sports team, those three. Okay, so Matthew Hill. I work at Unique Products, just up the road. I've been there since November, thanks to this wonderful person.
Yeah.
And I'm not really a sports fan, but my alma mater is UVU, so go Wolverines.
Derek Caswell. I also work at Unique Products. Been there for 3 months-ish. BYU, and I like lots of sports, football, basketball, volleyball, whatever,
I'm Justin Gerge. I do freelance at the moment, and not really into sports that much.
Fred Jennings, working on track as a package handler, $11 an hour. I work right now at HP that I can buy.
I hear we have someone in the room.
As far as the hard side.
I'm Joseph Meekum. I work at Exploit down in West Jordan. And there I'm doing right now UX development. The last time I watched a sports event was probably when the Jazz lost to the Bulls in '96 or something. That was exciting.
Glory days, huh?
Yeah, it just scarred me, and I won't watch it. No, I don't care about sports, but that was exciting.
Those were good times.
Yeah.
Miles Moretti. I currently work for Green Polka Dot Boxes, pretty much everything. And favorite sports, I used to do soccer. That was pretty much my favorite thing. Team-wise, I don't really care.
I'm Brian Rogers. I'm a freelancer. Pretty excited about the upcoming season 6 of Esports League. I've been following Counter-Strike pretty well, North American team, so that's about as local as the sports that I like.
I'm Jake Barlow. I'm also a freelancer. Brian and I used to work at the same outfit. And Jazz has lost to the Bulls since '96.
Thanks for the update.
I wondered how it's been going.
Mac Newbold, I work at Vivint Smart Home. When I care about sports, it's to cheer on the Utes or to cheer against BYU or something, or cheer on the Jazz. But we still do like some of our blue-colored neighbors who, it's weird being right here on the boundary. We get a lot from both sides. But I'm a Ute through and through.
I'm Steve Myers. I run a BYU message board. So.
You're a youth fan, right? That's what that means.
So I think that answer. I have season tickets to 5 different sports. So. Yeah.
I'm Ben Mankus. I work for Playground Sessions, which is a piano learning software. And I usually choose a football team the day of the Super Bowl.
I'm Vijay Lamure. I work with Encoding. Sports-wise, I play pretty much every sports, but I like cricket because I'm from India. And yeah, team-wise, whoever wins is my favorite team.
I'm Rick Wild, actually a stay-at-home dad, but I used to work in statistics and I didn't really like it, so while I'm staying at home, I'm teaching myself PhD. Oh yeah, and I like BYU, except when we're punching people. But by real, what I like the best is watching the Baltimore Orioles. Unfortunately, they're not that great this year.
All right, I'm Mark Niebergall. I work for a company out of Denver, drug testing. They have a few other products, but I work on a drug testing platform, which is interesting in Denver. And I went to Utah State. So Utah State basketball, when I was there, Stu Morrow, those were the glory days. They were just a lot of fun. So those are my favorites. Those are my favorite games to go to. I haven't been game for a long time, but back in the day, those were good times. So we're going to dive into the defensive coding crash course. I really want your feedback on this one. I'm giving this at ZenCon in a couple months. So any and all feedback is very welcome, positive or negative. I do feel like it has some refinements to do. I want to see what the group thinks of it as well. So, I've been developing PHP for about a dozen years. Master's degree in information systems, senior software engineer. I mentioned Denver. CSSLP and SSCP certifications, those software security certifications. I also do I'm subject matter expert for them. I'm due to exam development. I was out there a few weeks ago in Florida and helping them do some reclassification of items. So those are fun. They throw you in a room with a bunch of software security nerds and talk about things for 3.5 days or whatever. It's fun. Enjoy flying drones, fishing, skiing. I have 5 little boys at home, and wife. If you missed Open West, there's a picture from Open West. It was fun. It was good. Thanks to everyone that helped out and spoke. There was a handful in this room that were involved and volunteers and others. And thanks again to the sponsors, Alex and Mac, and we'll say Eli and Heather for Tech and JetBrains. So, we're going to cover why defensive coding is important, why it matters to you, some techniques to defensive coding, and also talk about some community trends and some of the best practices that are current in the PHP community. So, any Broncos fans? Kind of? Okay, so I used to live in Denver, so I had to go with the Broncos. Okay, so they've had 2 Super Bowl appearances lately, 2013, 2015. What was the difference between those 2 years? What were they really good at? What was the outcome of the Super Bowl?
2013 and 2015.
Yeah, yep, you got it right on. 2013, prolific offense, right? You had Manning throwing record numbers of touchdowns. They got to the Super Bowl, and who stopped them?
Defensive Seahawks.
Yeah, the best defense in the league, right? So the offense wins games, the defense wins championships, right? So what was the difference in 2015? You said defense. they rebuilt their team, didn't they, essentially, right?
It was terrible.
Yeah, so their offense wasn't all that good in 2015, but their defense was the best. Arguably some of the best in the last 20 years. Really good offense or defense in 2015, and they won. They beat the Carolina Panthers. I'm not a huge NFL fan, but that was a big deal, especially since I worked at a place in Denver. The town was in chaos for a few weeks. Everyone in the office was real excited and everything. So defense is really important. It gets you a long way. Their offense will help, obviously, but you got to have the defensive coding in our situation. You got to have the defense lined up. Anyone seen Rogue One? They have a lot of problems with the Empire has a lot of problems with their security, right, and their defense. They have many single points of failures. There's no encryption. There's no
Plug and play hard drives.
Yeah, plug and play hard drives. They have a lot of problems, right? If you watch the movie, thinking about it from a defensive security standpoint or defensive coding standpoint, it's really funny. No authentication, right? They have this droid that's, I'm trying not to spoil the movie here, but they have a droid that's gone missing for years, and he's able to hack into things and get access to all sorts of stuff. They have really bad air handling, right? If things go bad, just blow up the whole planet, great idea. So that's an example of how not to handle defense, right? Without giving away too much of the movie. But if you watch it, next time you watch it, think about bad practices as you watch it. It's really funny. So within, there's the 3 R's, defensive coding. You have reliability, resiliency, and recoverability. Reliability is it's predictable behavior within your application. You have a low likelihood of failure. You know what's going to happen. It's users coming to the application, or developers going to the code. It's predictable. You know what's going to happen. It's achieved by writing resilient code, having code that's strong. So resiliency is the ability to recover from problems. So when maybe a bad value comes in, or the service is down, an API fails, or whatever, it's the ability to recover from that problem and handle those errors correctly. Resilient code avoids assumptions. When you assume in code bad things happen, no matter how unlikely you think it's going to happen, it's going to happen, right? You write something and think, oh, this will never happen. A user, of course, is going to go and do that very thing and find that very problem first thing, of course. And with resiliency, you've got to have correct data types. Use type hinting, use return types, visibility modifiers, these features that are available in the programming language, in PHP in our case. So for example, anything kind of off with the first function? What are some things that kind of stick out, that's missing?
They might not have to do that.
Yeah. Brian, say
It's assuming that the thing that's passed in is an object.
yeah. It makes a lot of assumptions, doesn't it?
Yeah.
There's no visibility modifier on it. Brian's going to talk about coding standards. Won't go too much into it, but there's a high lack of coding standards on that function. There's no type hinting, right? The thing coming in could be anything, right? You could pass a boolean or a null in there, and you're going to try to call a method on it. It's going to crash, fail error. There are lots of problems. The second one is this definitely is better, right? You have your visibility, the public. It's doing something. You see coding standards come into play. It's a thing, so you know exactly what it is. You know it's going to have do that thing. It's going to return something. It has a strict return type of bool, so you know how it's going to behave. It's resilient. And then we have recoverability. Applications being able to come back when it crashes. So if there's a fatal error, if there's problems, it's going to handle that gracefully and behave as you're told. Recoverability really comes from good exception handling. You're going to see try catches, throw specific exceptions and handle those well. Hope for the best, code for the worst, right? That's how the saying goes, isn't it? Okay, a little twist on it for us, but so what are some qualities of good code? it's efficient, right? It does what it needs to do. It's high performing. It's not going to do things inefficiently. It's not going to do loops over and over, repeating itself. It's not going to be overly recursive, for example. It's going to be high performing. It's going to be structured well. Separation of services, right? You're not going to have 10,000 line classes. You're going to have things broken out. These are going to be loosely coupled. There's not going to be that tight dependencies in there. It's going to be secure. It's going to have the cryptography is going to be good. And the encryption is going to handle passwords and sensitive data correctly. It's going to use proven approaches. So it's going to use algorithms that are secure and modern. It's going to have good architecture. It's not going to trust bad input, right? It's not going to throw get variables into SQL statements, right? It's going to be smarter about that. It's easy to maintain, right? It's well organized. It's thought out and organized. The organization comes down to design patterns and inheritance and other things it's doing. It's documented, right? Using doc blocks and code, for example. It has documentation along with the business, and it has good adaptability, right? So if you need to go make a change to it, it's easy to make changes to. Brian's going to talk about unit tests later. That's a big key with the unit test is the ability to change things without breaking other things. Right? These are all nice things to see on a code base, right? And all these things are achieved by having good defensive coding practices. So we've kind of covered the why, and we'll get into more of the how. We're going to cover a lot of different techniques and different topics. We're not going to go overly deep into any of them, but we're going to highlight them so that there's at least an idea. Well, here's the list. Like I said, we'll go through each of them one by one and talk about them a little bit. We're going to move pretty quick, but always gets a good introduction to what's going on here. So attack surfaces. Attack surfaces, it's a measurement of your exposure by specific threats. When you get into threat modeling, when you're looking at an application, identifying threats that could be applicable to that application, you're identifying the attack surfaces. Its ability, this option to be attacked. So if you think about your application, how many entry points do you have is a common way to think about it. What's your attack surface? If you have a single point of entry, it's going to be limited. If you have for example, if you have all your PHP classes in the public web root, then you have lots of different attack surfaces, right? Because all those are publicly available. If someone were to instantiate the class outside of the class and someone was to hit that PHP page directly, it's going to do things. And it's publicly accessible, and you have a really large attack surface, right? So that's something to consider. If it's an internal server, right, you might be reducing your attack surface if it's not publicly available. So this is something to consider. And every feature is a possible attack vector. So every time you get a user story or a feature request to work on something, and that's supposed to go do something, there's security implications with there. It might be to go open up an API to do some specific functionality. That's got to be considered. Is this necessary? Is this something we want to make public? Is this something that, what kind of security controls need to be on there? Instead of just running out and start coding it and pushing it up, you got to consider security implications with that for the attack surface. We had a developer who decided that a server needed to have a proxy on it for some things that they were working on for the company. Well, he made that public, and then we self-DOSed ourselves, right? It became publicly known, so that server was hit. Obviously, if this happens, of course, we're not very happy with that person. But that's an example. Are you opening up services and features that can harm yourself? So something to consider with every story. As you think about those things, consider those things before working on them, it'll help improve the security posture. You can evaluate it. Again, the features that can be exploited. Maybe if you have a file upload what, do you have a limit on that? Do you have a file type that's limited to? Do you scan those for problems? You give a weight to based on severity of the impact to the feature, and you place the controls based on that weight. So if something has a high weight of impact, you focus the controls on the highest critical things. There's a concept of relative attack surface quotient. We have 3 dimensions that targets, which would be your resources, channels and protocols, which would be communication, and access rights or privileges. You can combine these 3 to help identify attack surfaces and prioritize. Again, focus on those high value resources. Your data is often the most high value, especially if you're dealing with sensitive data. It might be functionality or features though. Depends what you got. Any questions about that? We're going to move pretty quick through these. But so input validation. We'll go through the source, the type, the format, the length, range values, and chemicalization, but that'll be more further later. So get, post, server, cookie, files, requests, none of those are safe to use. You have to assume that they're bad. Right? We hope the users are going to be good, or hope the users are going to be kind, but you don't know. Yes, even servers on there intentionally. That is manipulated. It can be manipulated in some cases. Obviously, cookies can be very bad. Get, post, request, files. So scrutinize your trusted sources as well. And don't always assume that they're going to be good, unless it's actually a truly trusted source. Again, any user input should be treated as unsafe. It should be validated. Okay, who remembers the 8 types in PHP? Anyone want to give it a shot? We did this a while ago, but
int, boolean, float.
Is null.
Yeah, null. Wait, what are we up to now? 5? 4. Okay.
Object, array.
Object. Is it array now?
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
String.
string. And the weird one. Closure resource, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty good.
One thing I remember.
All right, so yeah, the type. So are we validating the input type? If something should be a bool, do we get a bool, right? Is it a float? A null, array, object, resource? Validating the specific types will get you a long way with coding defensively. String, of course, is one of the hardest ones because it can get lots of different types. But if it's an integer, it's an integer, right? Yeah. PHP is both digity with floats values. But anyways, so types. So you can also check to see if something's an instance of something. In my code, that happens a lot. There's also type hinting under methods. Everything that can be type hinting is. That's good. You can type in for the class. If it's abstracting, if it's interface, you can type in for an instance of for traits. You can check all these different things to make sure to ensure that behavior acts as expected. The format. So if it's a phone number, is it a phone number? Do you consider is the application applicable internationally? Do you have is that a consideration to include? Email addresses, it's complicated, right? Have you seen the regex for emails? It's massive, right? There are some tools that help with that. Country codes, different character patterns. What are you expecting in the input? Is there a minimum, maximum length? Is it a required value? Should it be null or should it be characters in a specific length, any specific characters? Is there a range? Check to see if it's between 1 and 10. If if you're doing a survey and it's 1 to 10, make sure it's 1 to 10. Date range, perhaps. Someone shouldn't have a birth date in the future. If it's A through A or AA through ZZ, maybe it's states, United States, and check that. Start and end values. Check these different ranges as your input, validating input. Whitelist is arguably the best thing you can do. It's not always practical, but it is a good way to ensure data is correct. You can also blacklist data. Blacklist specific values. Regular expressions, we use those a lot with data validation, often through frameworks, but that's a very helpful item to use. Check for alphanumeric. Is it free text? Do you allow values? If it's free text, is there injections? Do you have injection prevention? Is it malicious? Are you checking for things that shouldn't be in there? Trying to inject some JavaScript, or they're going to do some cross-site scripting or other. So there's a couple techniques: filtration and sanitation. Filtration would include whitelist and blacklist, regular expressions. If you want 10 digits, there's your regular expression. If you want alphanumeric string, there's your string. It's going to be any length. There's also, PHP has filter input. You can specify the type, so maybe like your get, your variable name, filter, and return a Boolean false if the filter fails, null if the value is not set, and they'll return the variable back upon success. That's another one you can use depending which project you have. It's available. For example, you can input post, check for the specific key, and make sure it's an integer, and it'll go through and check that for you. Something similar for get. In this case, he's using regular expression to check for 10 digits and get. So that's something you can do. You can also just capture the value and throw it through a regular expression check, but this is noted. Sanitation, get to remove unwanted characters. Often you see that for injection prevention. To clean up some data. Again, you have sanitation. It's a little bit different from filtering, so sanitation is going to remove anything that's not valid. So you can sanitize for emails, for URLs, for example, it'll strip off anything that shouldn't be an URL or an email, depending on what it is. And when should you validate data? On the front end of the client, so using JavaScript, before you submit a form, validate the data there. And it needs to be on the back end too, not just the front end, right? Please make sure it's on the back end, if nothing else. It should also be the front end too. But, so filter the input, escape the output is the long story short version of it. Any questions with filter? We'll move this pretty quick. I'll post this up on the Meetup page. Categorization is translating input to specific standardized values. So maybe encoding, maybe you have aliases. For example, if you have a specific date format you like to display, perhaps, standardize on that, categorize that display format. Make it so that your users see one date format. Make it easy for them to read and know what's going to happen. Anyone ever seen this in a table? I have. Oh, I hate those. If your data format is correct, you're not going to have this problem. Yes, on, one, true, T. In theory, it means the same thing, but that's an example. Standardize, categorize on a specific format. Free text versus predefined choices. Again, with the databases that are relational, use proper foreign keys. Use foreign key integrity, use unique key integrity, there are checks, constraints. Leverage the database tools for your data, please. Secure type checking. Part of code access security concept. Only trusted sources can run a specific application. And you want to prevent trusted sources from compromising the security. So PHP is a type-safe language, but C is not. So if there's issues in the C code, those can be attacked. PHP manages your memory for you. It's garbage collection and so on. But C is unmanaged, so it's susceptible to buffer overflow attacks and whatnot. Again, PHP is written in C. Make sure you're applying PHP security patches. So when there's PHP versions released, upgrade, and vet your third-party libraries. Don't assume the library is good. You remove it pretty quick. Well, you have questions at the very end. We get to. So who here uses Composer? All right, quite a few hands go up. Do you trust the libraries? What does it take to trust that library? What do you look for?
Generally, acceptance in the community and licensing.
Yeah. I think that acceptance in the community is a big part. You know, if something is untrusted within the community, it's not good. If it's had a security audit, that's a big plus too. Yeah, definitely. I generally avoid being an early adopter for third-party libraries because of the possible security implications. And check the quality. You know, does it have, for example, is it tested? Does it have full unit tests on it? Look at the code. Does it look good? Structurally, does it look good? Does it make sense? Can you actually look at the code and understand it? Or is it spaghetti? You know, look at the libraries. Don't just assume that they're good. Others really good. Just a couple days ago, Libsodium passed its security audit. It's going to be part of PHP Core 7.2. So that was really good. Scott I always forget his name. Posted a big blog in there, but that's an example of a library that's vetted, that's accepted by the community. It's going to be part of PHP Core. It's passed a security audit. That's a really good standard from a security standpoint. Quality again, unit tests. Is it actively maintained? You know, when was the last time it had a look at the history? When was the last time it was patched? Popularity is can kind of help gauge. It's not pure, but it's good help. Ease of use, coding standards. What kind of qualities do the libraries have? Review them. As a software developer, especially in PHP, you can look at that PHP library and see if it's good. So don't just assume that they're good and just include them.
I also like to look at how many issues they have in their GitHub.
Yeah.
And how responsive they are to the issues.
Oh yeah, how fast they close them and how they
Yeah.
respond to them. Yeah, that tells a lot. Especially like if security patches are highly prioritized, that's a good indication of an organized project. Cryptographic agility, ability to stay current. Don't try to write your own algorithms. Please use ones that were made by the experts and have been accepted within the community. Use password hash and password verify. PHP has had those since PHP 5 or something. It's very good. It's easy to use. Don't opt using MD5 for password hashing and other encryption attempts, hashing attempts. I mentioned the PHP 7.2 has Libsodium. Mcrypt is going bye-bye. It is bye-bye in 7.1 as March is deprecated. Upgrade to Libsodium or OpenSSL. Those are both very good alternatives to Mcrypt. Exception management, we talked a little bit about that. User try catches, throw the exceptions, handle them correctly. Don't display errors in production, right? It should be turned off in production. You should be logging them, right? You should be reporting errors. And dev have to report all your logs, their errors, and actively review them, whether you're using just putting the text file or using Splunk, whatever you're using. There's all e-notice, e-struct, e-deprecated. You can review those and make sure you're not spewing out errors and get them fixed. We regularly have stories to review the error logs in production and address any issues that are urgent or need concern. We try to keep that cleaned up and tidy. Because sometimes weird things happen in production, you got to address those. Coding reviews, you have static and dynamic ones, peer reviews. There's lots of repos have tools that can help you out. There's automatic code reviews. You have commit hooks, if you're using Jenkins or something. Continuous integration tools. Check for coding standards, run your unit tests, and so on. It's important to give constructive feedback. Avoid being negative on those, but also be understanding that people are trying to review it. And they also, a peer review also gives good architecture direction. It's a good place to help with architecture direction and understanding, and help with coding standards. You check for security issues, right? When you're reviewing code, you can look for security issues. Business rules, maybe there's related functionality that the developer didn't consider. Check for exception handling. So what if this happens? You point that out. All those are very helpful. Automatic code reviews can check for a lot of different things. You can run the unit test, run behavioral tests, and any other tools you need to run. Automatic tools or code reviews. There are some statistics. You have security automated tools. Also, there's some tools for design patterns. Don't go into them in PHP Depend, but there are some quite a few out there that are good. And we'll leave this section for Brian. We'll leave this part out. So, just some quick tips and tricks before we wrap up. Hope for the best, plan for the worst, right? When you're coding, never make assumptions. Always plan on things going bad. But you hope the users use the application right. There's abuse. You can have abuse cases and misuse cases. When you write a use case, you write what's going to happen, what you hope it could happen. The misuse would be, what if this person does something malicious or something they shouldn't be doing? And they'll help identify threats, help identify potential problems, and help pull in the security requirements with your code, help you code defensively. Limit your class functionality, avoid classes doing too much. And try to have clean code. Your function's doing too much. If you have a method that's 200 lines long, that's going to be way too long. There are people have different opinions. I see 10 to 20 is a pretty common standard that people settle on as teams for method functions. Some people I know keep it down to just a few. It just depends on the environment. Try to limit what they're doing. Keep it clean. Leverage the framework, especially leverage built-in PHP functionality. Don't try to reinvent the wheel if PHP can already do it built in. There's lots of different tools built into PHP that you may not be aware of. If you do something with arrays or strings or about anything, look it up and see if there's already something built in. Use type inting, use return types, use correct data types. Check for bools. Use strict types, triple equals instead of just a double equals. We've had meetups before we talked about when double equals can equal something you don't think it should. PHP is well known. It works as expected if you understand the internals. So make sure you use the strict types, checking as much as you can. Use the is checks as well. Again, use the database integrity. Use the normalization. Usually you go to third level normalization. Beyond that, usually slows performance. It's a consideration. You can denormalize to improve performance, but keep your composite foreign key relationships in place. Example. Community movements. PHP coding standards. There's FIG has some coding standards for how the code should look. This is again recommendations. It's the framework interactive group from some well-known community members. They have some coding styles, guidelines, suggestions. It's not forced, but they're highly recommended. Use autoloading. They have different, what the autoloading should look like, caching, HTTP message interfaces. In progress right now is security issue reporting and handling, how to do documentation. Those kind of dying though. There's an extended coding style coming out as well. They're working on it. Within security, you have OWASP top 10. Security all parts of the system development lifecycle. In the episode we talked about, the attacks becoming more sophisticated, so keep your code defensive to help accommodate those. MD5 is being sunset. The collisions are getting too high. Another thing you're doing MD5 should be updated to something more current. Information, or the Internet of Things, of course, is we see items that are deployed and not secured, and so the problems down the line later. So make sure things are secure if you work in that area. It's an increased importance to be secure. It's a good skill to have complement your development if something you're interested in. That's what I really like, so that's what I emphasize that. I think community, you generally see conferences are helping set trends. Magazines are focusing on topics. Blogs are helping dispense information or domain knowledge. Social media is helping share ideas and collaboration. Instant messaging, there's lots of different Slack channels you can get on and chat with people within the community. So some considerations to take away. Now, how can your project be attacked? What does your look like? Is it being attacked right now? What are your weak points in your projects? What are you going to do different? Consider some of the topics we talked about, and think about what you can change to improve the defensiveness of your code. Make a plan, make a change in your organization. As you code defensively, the number of bugs goes down, the maintainability of the project becomes easier, you're able to get faster velocity, features or your application stabilizes. Lots of good things come out of this as you focus on defensive coding. It takes a bit of extra time up front, but it pays off. Convincing upper management, these are some ideas you can pass by. So, any questions? We'll keep the questions brief.
How do you balance, when you're talking about sanitizing your inputs or validating them, how do you balance that with separation of concerns? I mean, do you have something that is, whose sole job is to sanitize the inputs, I mean, and then a class that might take those, has no responsibility for the validation, or is it all inside the class?
Yeah, that's a fun one. We used a couple different layers. We have a generic sanitization service, essentially, that things are thrown through to sanitize it. Checking for things like injection attacks, right? You don't want to write injection prevention at every single layer. You want to have a generic service or something that's going to be doing and handling that. The models, of course, validating data. Databases helping ensure that as well. So. Any questions?
Yeah, you're talking about filter the input and then escape the output, right?
Yeah.
So the program that I've been working on with, I've been using PDO to all my MySQL and stuff. I know in the past when I was doing like MySQL and MySQLi, I was always like, what is it, escape string and all that jazz.
Yeah.
But from what I understand, PDO is handling all that now,
Yeah, so
or am I just being an idiot? Like, is that all?
Right, so using prepared statements.
Yeah. So it's all good to go there.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you're using it correctly at least.
Yeah.
You can still abuse it.
Yeah, PDO and everything's just plugged right.
Using prepared statements is a better solution than
Like real escape.
sanitizing, than escaping.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's what I read. So
Because
I've been using PDO.
There have been problems with escaping libraries.
Really?
Yeah.
In the past. I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully
Writing.
there aren't any right now, but you never know.
Yeah. How do you avoid writing out actual SQL statements and use prepared statements instead? So use PDO or whatever you're using to build up the queries.
Right.
That's a very good approach.
Okay.
I think there's actually in the old MySQL library, there's a function for escaping strings. If you read the documentation, it says don't use this because it doesn't work right.
Real escape. There's MySQL escape string.
Yeah,
MySQL real escape string.
Yeah.
It really does escape the
But it's named appropriately. They should have named it.
Backwards, you have another documentation page on eval. So pretty much says, if you ever find a reason to use this, you're doing it wrong, think another way. So
Eval's evil.
yeah, eval is, you never want to use it, but for some reason it's still there.
Yeah. And we'll take a break here and we'll switch over to Brian.
Well, thanks, man.